The day I picked up Feichai, he was digging through a garbage can next to my street food stall. He was covered in gray grime, his left hind leg visibly limping. When he saw me walk out holding a bowl of leftover rice, his ears twitched, but he didn't run away. His eyes were strange. Unlike other stray dogs that look fearful or beg for pity, his eyes held a sort of, how do I put this? The calm of someone who had seen it all. I crouched down. Wanna eat? He looked at me for 2 seconds, then ambled over slowly and began to eat with immaculate table manners. He was obviously just a mutt, but he ate like he was attending a state banquet. I reached out and patted his head. His body stiffened for a second, but he didn't pull away. All right then, I said, clapping my hands and standing up. You've got quite the personality for a crippled dog. Come home with me. From now on, your name is Feichai. He looked up at me. It was a look I would only understand much later. The general gist was, who the hell are you calling a useless bum? Anyway, Feichai moved into my house. It took me half a month to realize this dog was not normal. First, he never barked. The neighbor's toy poodle could scream at him until its voice went hoarse, and Feichai would just lie on the balcony soaking up the sun, too lazy to even lift an eyelid. Second, he was a picky eater. I bought him the most expensive dog food, and he took one sniff before turning his head away in disgust. But every time I made egg fried rice, he would sit perfectly at the kitchen door, his tail spinning like a helicopter rotor. Third, and the most bizarre thing of all, I got up to drink water in the middle of the night once and saw him sitting on the windowsill, looking up at the moon, letting out a long, heavy sigh. It was a sigh, not a howl. A dog was sighing. I rubbed my eyes, figuring I was just working too hard. The real trouble happened on a Wednesday night. When Zhang Tianyao showed up with 7 or 8 bodyguards, I was busy stir-frying squid for a customer. The oil in the wok was sizzling loudly, so I didn't hear the commotion until Annie Wong, who ran the stall next to mine, yanked me hard from behind. Xiaoya, run. I turned around. Zhang Tianyao had just kicked over my spice rack. Sichuan peppercorns and chili flakes spilled across the pavement, glowing as red as blood. Su Xiaoya, he said, chewing on a cigarette with a sleazy smile. I'm trying to play nice, but you're really pushing it, huh? Every stall on this street pays me a monthly cut. Who do you think you are? I tightened my grip on my spatula. Young Master Zhang, I have a business license and I pay my taxes. Why should I give my money to you? Because I feel like it. He took 2 steps closer, reaching out to tilt my chin up. Get on your knees, call me Lord. And maybe this whole thing. Before he could finish his sentence, Feichai crawled out from under my cart. He slowly ambled over and sat down right in front of me. A crippled, dirty mutt, sitting in a standoff against Zhang Tianyao and a wall of bodyguards. It was almost comical. Zhang Tianyao looked down and let out a harsh laugh. Your dog's pretty funny looking, just like its owner. Then, Feichai spoke. His voice was deep, carrying the rasp of someone who hadn't spoken in a long time. But every single word was sharp, like a knife carving into stone. Before you touch the person under my protection, he said, did you ask the dog who flattened the 30 cities of the western frontier? The night market went dead silent. Auntie Wong dropped her fan. A customer squeezed his skewer so hard the bamboo pierced his palm, but he didn't even flinch. Zhang Tianyao's smile froze on his face like someone had hit the pause button. I looked down at Feichai. He turned his head to look at me, and in those weathered dog eyes, I actually saw a trace of helplessness. What are you staring at? He said. We'll talk when we get home. I have no idea how I closed up the stall that night. Annie Wong helped me pack, her hands shaking like she had Parkinson's the entire time. Zhang Tianyao and his crew slinked away in terror. Right before they left, all their phones started pinging, probably flooded with videos of a talking dog going viral. Feichai, I said, locking the front door and staring at him as he slowly made his way to his dog bed. Explain yourself. He stopped, turned around, and stayed silent for a long time. My name is Chu Quangfeng, he finally said. 500 years ago, I was the general of the West for the great Qin dynasty. Later, I was assassinated, and for reasons I still don't understand, my soul was trapped inside the body of this dog. I pinched my own thigh. It hurt. So you really flattened 30 cities in the western frontier? Yes. He lay down, resting his head on his front paws, looking exhausted. It's all in the past now. Right now, I just want to quietly eat a bowl of your egg-fried rice. I stared at his furry, canine face, trying incredibly hard to connect the words general and Feichai. So, I crouched down slowly. You're a picky eater because I got used to your cooking. Dog food is literally impossible to swallow. I suddenly felt the urge to laugh, but also the urge to cry. The next morning, 3 people were kneeling outside my front door. The first was Li Tiangang. He was dressed in rags, sporting heavy stubble, but his kneeling posture was as straight as a pine tree. Strapped to his back was a long object wrapped in dirty cloth. I guessed it was a sword. The second was a young man in a bespoke, high-end suit with a face built to trend on social media. I recognized him. He was Gu Fei, the currently exploding pop idol. The third was a middle-aged woman with a frigid aura. A visible layer of frost clung to her fingertips. She knelt in the back, her eyes red, looking the most emotional of the 3. The 3 of them faced my security door and choked out in unison. Your subordinates, greet the god of war. I looked back at Feichai, who was dozing on the sofa. His ears twitched, but he didn't open his eyes. He just lazily replied, You're too loud. Tell the Li kid to go buy 2 crullers. Make sure they're crispy. Li Tiangang shouted. Yes, sir, stood up, and left. I looked through the peephole and watched him summon a flying sword and soar into the sky. I stood there, mind completely blown. Things were escalating way beyond my imagination. Feichai, Chu Kuangfeng, was the god of war of the western frontier. He had 12 iron guards under his command, all of whom were the absolute apex predators of their era. 500 years had passed, and his old subordinates had scattered. Some became hidden sword saints, some became business tycoons, and some infiltrated the entertainment industry. Gu Fei was one of the latter. He had been the youngest scout in the army and had survived to the modern era purely on his good looks. As for Zhang Tianyao family, they just happened to be the descendants of the traitors who killed him. They used dark magic to assassinate me back then. Feichai mumbled around a mouthful of shrimp I was feeding him. Now that I'm back, they're definitely going to panic. So Zhang Tianyao coming to mess with me wasn't an accident. Correct. He looked up at me. You have the Culinary God bloodline. Even though it hasn't awakened, the food you cook contains a special spiritual energy. The Zhang family has been hunting people like you for centuries. They want to use you as an ingredient to refine pills to extend their lifespans. The spatula slipped out of my hand and fell into the wok. Culinary God bloodline. Me? A girl who stir-fries squid at a night market? That afternoon, Zhang Tianyao's father, Zhang Zhinshan, showed up personally. He didn't come to apologize. He came to kill. He brought over 20 warlocks with him, surrounding my apartment building so tightly not even a drop of water could leak through. Li Tiangang stood at my front door. Without even unsheathing his sword, he kicked 3 of them flying. Upstairs, Gu Fei had started a live stream, pointing his camera out the window. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stream. Today, we're doing a special performance. Watch an ancient god of war absolutely decimate a modern-day villain. The live chat was going insane, but I didn't have time to look. Feichai suddenly stood up from my feet and walked to the window. His limp seemed to vanish. His spine straightened, and his gray, dusty fur shimmered with a dark, golden aura in the setting sun. Xiaoya. He looked back at me, his eyes dead serious. No matter what happens next, do not come outside. Feichai. Call me Chu Kuangfeng. He paused, his voice softening. But, if it's you, Feichai is fine too. Then, he leaped. Out of a 3rd-story window. From that window, I saw a scene I will never forget for the rest of my life. A dog, sitting in the center of 20-something warlocks, radiating a torrential, heaven-shaking aura. The sheer pressure was like a mountain suddenly crashing down. Every single warlock dropped to their knees. Zhang Zhinshan was pale as a ghost, pointing a trembling finger at him. Why, you're that dog. You little Zhang family brat. Feichai's voice wasn't loud, but it echoed clearly in everyone's ears. It's been 500 years. Have you finished eating the life extension pills you made from my fractured soul? Zhang Zhinshan collapsed to the ground. Feichai walked over, step by step. His paw struck the concrete with heavy, muffled thuds. He stopped right in front of the man and stared down into his eyes. Back then, your ancestor traded the lives of my entire family for his own immortality, he said. Today, the debt is due. There was no gore. Li Tiangang simply gave his sword a gentle wave, and a cloud of black smoke erupted from Zhang Jinshan's body, scattering into the wind. The man instantly looked 30 years older, his hair turning snow white in a matter of seconds. "I've abolished the foundation of your dark arts," Feichai said, turning around to walk back. "Live the rest of your life as an honest, ordinary man." When he leaped back through the third-story window, I was crying. "What are you crying for?" he said, rubbing his head against my hand. "The fried rice is burning." My culinary god bloodline awakened 3 days later. Feichai said that when he jumped out of the window that day, my anxiety had caused my internal seal to loosen. The result? Every single dish I cooked started to glow. Literally, it glowed. I brought out the first bowl of glowing egg-fried rice. Li Tiangang took one bite and instantly broke through a martial arts bottleneck that had trapped him for 30 years. Gu Fei took the second bite, and tears streamed down his face on his live stream. "It's so good. I want to retire from the industry and go home to farm." Feichai, sitting on the table, took the third bite. His entire canine body violently shuddered. The gray fur on his body began to shed, revealing a sleek coat of silver-white fur underneath. "Huh." He looked down at himself. "My seal, it's loosening too. So you weren't actually a mutt?" "I wasn't a dog to begin with," he said, rolling his eyes at me. "My soul is just trapped in a dog's body. If the seal breaks completely, I should be able to return to my human form." I stared at him for 3 seconds. "But you're really cute like this. What if you just stay a dog?" Feichai. Once the news of the Zhang family's downfall spread, every freak and weirdo in the woodwork came knocking on our door. Some wanted to become his disciples, some wanted to beg for food, and some tried to steal Feichai's fur to brew potions. Feichai got so annoyed that he finally had Li Tiangang set up a wooden sign at the door, "God of War in Seclusion. No visitors." Next to it was a line of smaller text: "If you want egg-fried rice, take a number and wait in line. Limited to 20 bowls a day." And just like that, my street food business reopened. Except now, the line stretched from one end of the street to the other. People were lining up at 3 a.m. just to get a spot for a bowl of glowing fried rice. Auntie Wong sat next to us every day, charging people money to rent her plastic stools, laughing so hard she couldn't close her mouth. One day, my younger brother, Su Xiaoyong, a quiet, straight-A student, came home from school. Seeing a sea of people kneeling outside our house, he squeezed through the crowd without changing his expression, walked up to Feichai, and said, "Dog bro, I'm stuck on a physics problem." Feichai looked up, a look of profound gratification crossing his canine face. "Let me see it." A 500-year-old ancient general was tutoring my brother in AP Physics. I walked out holding a plate of fried rice and decided that the world was just one giant, chaotic circus. But the trouble wasn't over. Zhang Jinshan may have been crippled, but he was backed by a massive faction, the Shadow Sect, the very organization that had helped the Zhang family assassinate Chu Guangfeng centuries ago. Hearing that the god of war had returned, they immediately dispatched their 3 grand elders to eliminate him. This time, the scale was massive. All 3 elders were at the demigod level. Li Tiangang and Gu Fei had to team up just to barely hold off 2 of them. The 3rd elder smashed straight into my kitchen and hoisted me into the air by my throat. A culinary god bloodline, he licked his lips. "If I eat you, I will gain immortality." By the time Feichai charged in from the balcony, I was already suffocating. He clamped his jaws down hard on the elder's wrist. The elder screamed, dropped me, and backhanded Feichai with a massive palm strike. Feichai was sent flying, crashing into my spice rack. Sichuan peppercorns and chili flakes spilled across the floor once again. I lay coughing on the tiles. Through watering eyes, I saw Feichai struggling to his feet. His silver fur began to catch fire. Actual, literal fire. Silver flames erupted from within his body. "Xiaoya," his voice was hoarse. "Close your eyes." I didn't close them. I watched as the crippled dog stood up within the silver inferno. His bones elongated, his fur burned away, and the silhouette of a man gradually took shape. Broad shoulders, a narrow waist, black battle armor, and hair flowing down to his waist. His features carried the weight of 500 years of war and frost. But his eyes, they were the exact same eyes. Lazy, weathered, and looking at me with a touch of helpless tenderness. Chu Guangfeng raised his hand, pressing a single finger against the center of the elder's forehead. The elder exploded. literally exploded into a million specks of light, scattering into the evening wind. He turned his head to look at me, the corner of his mouth curving upward. Are you done staring? The fried rice is burning. It took me 3 full days to accept the fact that Feichai had turned into a ridiculously handsome man. Mostly because he was incredibly annoying. When he was a dog, the most he did was sit at the kitchen door and wag his tail. Now that he was human, he just leaned against the doorframe with his arms crossed, watching me cook, casually dropping critiques. Not enough salt. The heat's too high. The sweet and sour ribs you made last time were better. Chu Guangfeng. I pointed my spatula at him. Are you a general or a food critic? Both. He walked over and smoothly took the spatula from my hand. Move over. Let me do it. The almighty god of war, wearing my floral apron, tossing a wok behind a night market food cart. It was such a majestic sight that Annie Wong filmed it and put it on TikTok. It broke 100 million views on the first day. The top comment was, I always knew the world was just a giant comedy sketch, and apparently, gods of war aren't exempt. With the Shadow Sect wiped out, life finally settled down. Chu Guangfeng stayed. In his own words, I failed to protect my family 500 years ago. This time, I want to try protecting one person. He helped me renovate the stall, changing the sign from Xiaoya's Snacks to God of War Fried Rice. Li Tiangang became our chief taste tester. Gu Fei handled our livestream marketing. Su Xiaoyang managed the finances. And I was busy getting ordered around by all of them. One night after closing up, Chu Guangfeng was squatting on the curb eating a slice of watermelon. I sat down next to him. Hey, I said, what are your plans for the future? He spit out a watermelon seed. Following you. The great god of war is going to follow a girl who stir-fries squid. Yeah. He turned to look at me. In the moonlight, his features looked incredibly sharp and deep. Because the food you make tastes like home. My face flushed hot. I ducked my head and furiously bit into my watermelon, almost swallowing a seed. Feichai? No. Chu Guangfeng let out a low laugh and reached over to ruffle my hair. Don't be nervous, he said. I'll help you toss the wok from now on. If the story ended here, it would be your standard, happy-go-lucky comedy. But life always loves to throw in a little extra seasoning. Early one morning a month later, I woke up to find a letter on my nightstand. The handwriting was sharp and bold, Chu Guangfeng's. Xiaoya, there's unrest in the western frontier. My old subordinate sent a message, and I have to go back. I'll be gone for half a month, maybe a full month. I wrote the secret recipe for the fried rice on the fridge. Don't let Li Tiangang steal it. Wait for me. I rushed outside. The courtyard was empty. Only Li Tiangang was squatting by the wall, chewing on a steamed bun. The god of war left? He asked. He left. Did he pack his luggage? He took a sword. Li Tiangang was silent for a moment, then suddenly smiled. That's good. Taking his sword means he's coming back. When he left us 500 years ago, he didn't even take his blade. I turned back inside and saw a piece of paper pinned to the fridge with a magnet. On it was a crude, scribbled drawing of a dog's head. Next to it were 2 words, Feichai Express. My nose stung, but I couldn't help but smile. Half a month later, the night market was operating as usual. A long line stretched out in front of God of War Fried Rice. Gu Fei was streaming, Su Xiaoyang was doing the accounting, and I was tossing the wok. Everything looked exactly the same, except for the missing figure who used to lean against the doorframe and complain about my cooking. At 10 p.m., we closed up. I squatted on the curb eating watermelon. The space next to me was empty. Suddenly, a shadow fell over me. I looked up. Chu Guangfeng stood in front of me. His black battle armor was dusted with the sand of the western frontier, and there was a fresh scar on his left arm, but his eyes were as bright as stars. You're back. I stood up. Yeah. He looked down at the watermelon in my hand. Save me a bite. I handed it to him, and he took a massive bite. How was the frontier? Handled, he mumbled with his mouth full. A few little mice were digging up graves. I flattened them. What about your injury? Just a flesh wound. He winked at me. Cook me a few good meals, and I'll be right as rain. I raised my hand to smack him, but he caught my wrist. Xiaoya, his voice suddenly grew serious. For 500 years, I've been wondering why I guarded the western frontier back then. And when I was trapped in that dog's body, I thought about it a lot more. Did you figure it out? I did. He let go of my wrist, took a step back. and gave me a solemn, traditional martial arts bow. I guarded the western frontier to protect the citizens behind me. Now, I'm here to protect you. The last light of the night market clicked off. The moonlight poured down, illuminating his face. I could hear my own heart beating like a drum. Well then, I cleared my throat. Tomorrow, you're tossing the wok. He broke into a wide grin, flashing a row of white teeth. Deal. Epilogue. 3 months later, God of War Fried Rice opened its first branch, officially launching a nationwide chain. Gu Fei retired from the entertainment industry and became our chief brand ambassador, which basically meant he stood in front of the branches and let people take pictures with him. Li Tiangang broke through to the Mahayana realm, and his primary duty was now chopping green onions. Su Xiaoyang got accepted into Tsinghua University. Before he left for Beijing, he hugged Chu Guangfeng's dog bed, even though Chu Guangfeng hadn't slept in it for months, and cried for half an hour. Chu Guangfeng patted him on the shoulder. Study hard. Come back and manage your sister's finances. As for me, I was sitting on the second-floor balcony of our flagship store, looking down at the massive crowds waiting in line, eating a slice of watermelon. Chu Guangfeng poked his head out from the kitchen. Fried rice is ready. I saved you the bowl with the most crispy bits. Coming. I stood up, wiped the watermelon juice off my hands, and glanced back at the empty dog bed in the corner of the balcony. Inside it rested a chew toy, Feichai's favorite flavor. He hadn't touched it since the day he regained his human form. But I never threw it away. How do I explain it? Sometimes, even if you don't need something anymore, you still want to keep it around. Just like how a certain someone, despite being a 500-year-old god of war, insisted on staying here to be a busboy for a night market vendor. I walked to the kitchen door holding my bowl. Chu Guangfeng was wearing an apron, tossing the wok, the side of his face flushed slightly from the heat of the stove. What are you staring at? He said without turning around. Eat. Feichai. I leaned against the doorframe and smiled. Welcome home. His hand paused mid-toss. Then, I heard him say softly, yeah, I'm back. By the time we opened our 7th branch, trouble came knocking again. This time, it wasn't the remnants of the Shadow Sect, nor the survivors of the Zhang family. It was the Culinary God Palace. That evening, I was in the back kitchen of the flagship store developing a new recipe when the noise outside suddenly died down. The line of customers parted like a curtain cut by invisible scissors, leaving a perfectly straight path. 3 people in flowing moon-white robes walked in. Leading them was a handsome, refined man who looked about 30. He had a red cinnabar mark between his eyebrows, and his every movement carried a rigid, ancient elegance. He surveyed the room, his gaze finally landing on my apron. To think the contemporary heir of the Culinary God bloodline is tossing a wok at a night market, he said. His tone was even, like he was stating a deeply tragic fact. Su Xiaoya, come back to the Culinary God Palace with me. Your talent shouldn't be wasted in a place like this. Chu Guangfeng walked out of the kitchen, still holding his spatula. Seeing the 3 people in white robes, his brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. Culinary God Palace. He rested the spatula on his shoulder. 500 years ago, your palace master came to my camp to mooch free food, and I kicked him out 3 times. What? You get a new palace master, and suddenly the rules change. The man's pupils shrank the moment he saw Chu Guangfeng. The 2 attendants behind him actually took a half-step back. Lord God of War, you're still alive? Alive and kicking. Chu Guangfeng stepped up beside me, naturally shifting his body to block half of me from their view. Xiaoya isn't going anywhere with you. Go back to where you came from. A look of conflict flashed across the man's face, but he eventually bowed respectfully. Lord God of War, the Culinary God bloodline belongs to the Culinary God Palace by right. We house the recipes and cultivation methods left behind by every culinary god in history. If Lady Xiaoya returns with us to train, her future will be limitless. You can't possibly want her to spend her entire life making fried rice at a night market. The room fell dead silent. I looked down at my grease-stained apron, then at the flawless jade thumb ring on the man's hand. Selling that 1 ring would probably be enough to open 100 more branches. You're right, I spoke up. I actually do want to know what the Culinary God bloodline really is. Chu Guangfeng turned his head to look at me. I blinked at him. But I have a condition, I continued. I'll go, but Chu Guangfeng goes with me. Where he goes, I go. Also, I need to come back here 3 days a week. This stall pays for my brother's tuition, it's Annie Wong's retirement fund, and it's Li Tiangong's green onion chopping training ground. I can't just abandon it. The man was silent for a moment before nodding. Acceptable. The Culinary God Palace was hidden deep within the Zhongnan Mountains, shrouded in mist like a mythological wonderland. When I arrived, I realized this place was absolutely nothing like I had imagined. My expectations, golden halls, ethereal Shenjing vibes, exotic delicacies everywhere. Reality, a bunch of old men and women in white robes standing around a massive iron wok, screaming at each other. I told you to blanch it for 3 seconds. 3 seconds. Did you use a stopwatch? Is there really a difference between 3 seconds and 5 seconds? Is your tongue a ruler? Yes, there is. 2 seconds makes the greens too tough. They're overcooked. Chu Kuangfing stood next to me, the corner of his mouth twitching. When I came here for free food 500 years ago, they were arguing about this exact same dish. Half a millennium later, they're still arguing. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. The group of old people uniformly snapped their heads to look at me. The white-bearded old man leading the group hobbled over, looking me up and down. Bloodline purity is quite good. He reached out and squeezed my arm. But these hands have been tossing woks too fiercely. Your meridians are clogged with the grease and smoke of the mortal world. We need to purge them. How long will that take? 3 months. Too long. Chu Kuangfing interjected. 1 month. The old man glared at him. Lord God of War, you are asking for the impossible. Then I'll give you 2 months. Chu Kuangfing pulled a small pouch from his robes and tossed it over. Use this to offset the time. The old man opened the pouch, and his hands started shaking. Inside was a batch of dried moonbeam grass, an herb that only grew in the extreme cold of the western frontier and could only be harvested once every 500 years. Deal. The old man hurriedly shoved the moonbeam grass into his robes, turned to me, and grinned. Su Xiaoya, right? Starting tomorrow, this old master will teach you personally. Training at the Culinary God Palace was harder than I imagined. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. every day. First, 2 hours of stance training. But not normal stance training. I had to levitate directly over a boiling wok of oil, the soles of my feet half an inch from the surface. The steam soaked me in sweat, and if I lost focus for a second, I would fall in. The old palace master called this training your composure. Mornings were for knife skills. I had to slice tofu into threads, underwater. The threads had to be thin enough to thread a needle. On my first day, I ruined 30 blocks of tofu and was punished by being sent to carry water from the back mountain. Chu Kuangfing followed me. He sat on a cliff and watched me carry buckets of water back and forth 20 times. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore. With a wave of his hand, he diverted an entire mountain stream directly to the kitchen door. The old palace master's beard practically flew up in anger. Lord God of War, that is cheating. She's got blisters on the soles of her feet, Chu Kuangfing said flatly. Let her rest for the afternoon. The old palace master glared at him for a long time, then huffed and walked away. That afternoon, Chu Kuangfing sat at the kitchen door. Using the same hand that once wielded swords to slay armies, he took a needle and carefully popped the blisters on my feet. His movements were impossibly gentle. Did you pop blisters for your soldiers back in the day? I asked, wincing. No. He kept his head down, focused on the needle. I only chopped off heads back then. Thank you for your personal service, my lord. He let out a short laugh, not looking up. A month later, my culinary skills had skyrocketed. More accurately, my bloodline awakening had deepened significantly. Before, my food just glowed. Now it was glowing plus aroma-manifestation. If I stir-fried a plate of greens, the steam rising from the wok would condense into the shape of a small dragon, circling the plate 3 times before dissipating. The old palace master wept tears of joy. 300 years. We finally have someone who can manifest aromas again. That night, Chu Kuangfing was sitting on the palace's stargazing tower, eating a slice of watermelon. I walked up carrying a fresh plate of osmanthus cakes and sat down next to him. 2 more months, I said. Once I finish learning, I'm going back. Yeah. Are you going to stay at the night market forever? He paused his chewing. 500 years ago, I guarded the western frontier to follow military orders. After my soul was trapped, I stayed to wait for an opportunity. He put down the watermelon and turned to look at me. Now I've found my opportunity, and I've forgotten the military orders. The night market is fine. It's a bit loud, but there's an unlimited supply of egg-fried rice. So you're staying? Yeah. He reached out and brushed a crumb of osmanthus cake off the corner of my mouth. I told you, your food tastes like home. I've lived for 500 years, and this is the only time I've ever tasted it. My ears burned. I ducked my head and furiously chewed on a cake to hide it. The wind on the stargazing tower was strong. Without making a big deal out of it, he shifted his body, perfectly blocking the wind for me. The disaster happened at the end of the second month. That night, I was practicing a lost recipe called 100-flower stew when the floor tiles beneath the stove suddenly lit up with dark red runes. Before I could react, a massive suction force yanked me downward. It was a teleportation array left behind by the Shadow Sect. 500 years ago, they had buried arrays beneath the Culinary God palace precisely to capture an awakened Culinary God bloodline should one ever appear. The moment I fell in, I heard Chu Kuangfeng screaming my name from above, and then his voice faded away. When I opened my eyes, I was in an underground cavern. The walls were covered in dense runes, and a figure in a black robe and a mask sat in the center. Another one. The man's voice was raspy. We caught the last Culinary God bloodline 500 years ago. We refined her into a pill that gave the Zhang family patriarch an extra 100 years of life. Your blood is purer than hers. We should be able to refine 3 pills from you. My body felt weak. The array was continuously siphoning the spiritual energy from my bloodline. But my brain was spinning. The last one. They caught a Culinary God bloodline 500 years ago. The person you caught back then, what was her name? I gritted my teeth and asked. The man in black seemed amused by the question. What was it? Oh, her surname was Su. Su Yusin, I think. The blood in my veins turned to ice. Su Yusin. That was my grandmother's name. My dad had told me my grandmother disappeared before I was born. The family always assumed she had died of illness. It turns out, she was captured and turned into a pill. My spiritual energy was draining faster and faster, and my consciousness began to blur. In a daze, I heard a massive boom from above. The entire cavern shook. A second boom. A crack appeared in the ceiling, letting moonlight spill in. A third boom. The ceiling completely exploded. Chu Kuangfeng dropped from the sky. His black battle armor snapped in the wind. In his hand, he held a long spear flowing with silver light. His life-bound weapon, which had been sealed away with him 500 years ago and was only now completely unsealed. Chu Kuangfeng, the man in black, stood up, actual fear creeping into his voice. Isn't your soul still sealed? I broke it a month ago. Chu Kuangfeng pointed his spear at the ground, walking forward step by step. You didn't know? Oh, right. You hide underground. The news didn't reach you. With a sweep of his spear, the man in black was sent flying, crashing into the rock wall. The array shattered instantly, and the suction force draining me vanished. Chu Kuangfeng scooped me up with one arm. I collapsed against his chest, my fingers still trembling. My grandmother. My voice was hoarse. They turned my grandmother into a pill. Chu Kuangfeng's arm tightened around me for a second. I know, his voice was incredibly deep. So I'm going to avenge her for you. The spear left his hand, streaking forward like a silver dragon. In that fraction of a second, the entire underground cavern was lit up as bright as day. The man in black didn't even have time to scream before he was vaporized into dust. Before I closed my eyes and passed out, I saw Chu Kuangfeng looking down at me, his lips moving. I couldn't hear what he said, but his lips seemed to form the words, "Don't be afraid. I'm here." When I woke up, I was in the back mountains of the Culinary God Palace. My head was resting on Chu Kuangfeng's lap, and his battle armor was draped over me. The moonlight shone on my face, and next to me sat a bowl of warm 100-flower stew, the very stew I had been making. He had heated it up for me. Awake, he looked down at me. Yeah, my throat was still raspy. Is everything dealt with? The Shadow Sect's final stronghold has been eradicated. The palace members are cleaning up the mess. He paused. About your grandmother. I looked into it. She came here willingly. I sat up abruptly. She foresaw that you would awaken the Culinary God bloodline, and she foresaw that the Shadow Sect would come to capture you. She used her own blood to leave a backlash curse within the array. The curse would activate the moment her descendant was sucked in. Chu Guangfeng looked at me. When you were dragged into the cavern, the backlash curse had already triggered. If it weren't for the curse she left behind, I wouldn't have been able to break my final seal in time. I sat in silence for a long time. My grandmother died before I was even born. I hadn't even seen a picture of her. All I knew was that she was a famous cook, and she taught my dad everything he knew. I never realized that when she died, she had planned 50 years into the future. She left this for you. Chu Guangfeng pulled a yellowed piece of paper from his robes. I found it next to the core of the array. There was only one line of text on the paper, written in shaky handwriting, as if penned with her final ounce of strength. Xiaoya, eat food while it's hot, and love people while it's early. I clutched the piece of paper, my tears falling fast and heavy. Chu Guangfeng reached out and pressed my head against his shoulder. His movements were clumsy, like he was trying to comfort an injured small animal. Go ahead and cry, he said. When you're done, we'll go back and make egg fried rice. At the end of the 2 months, I officially graduated. On the day of my departure, the old palace master broke his own rules and made a dish of boiled cabbage, a legendary Sichuan dish, to see me off. It tasted heavenly. I asked him, if you can make dishes that taste this amazing, why were you arguing so loudly with Li Tiangang over a plate of stir-fried greens the other day? The old palace master's beard flew up. Arguing is a traditional culture of the Culinary God palace. If we don't argue, what else are we supposed to do? Meditate. Chu Guangfeng burst out laughing next to me. On our way back to the city, Gu Fei started a live stream. Li Tiangang flew us back on his flying sword, which currently had a bag of braised chicken feet tied to the hilt. Annie Wong had asked him to bring some back. Su Xiaoyang video called from Tsinghua University. His first sentence was, "Sister, you lost weight." His second sentence was, "Dog bro, now that you're human, do you still eat dog food?" Chu Guangfeng looked directly into the camera and answered seriously, "No. But if your sister makes it, I'll consider it." The live chat completely lost its mind. I sat on the back of Li Tiangang's flying sword, with Chu Guangfeng sitting right beside me. As the wind blew, his sleeve brushed against the back of my hand. I didn't pull away, and neither did he. "What are we eating for our first meal back home?" he asked. "Egg fried rice." "Second meal?" "Egg fried rice." "Third meal?" "Chu Guangfeng, are you ever going to stop?" He turned his head to look at me. The moonlight made his eyes look incredibly bright. "I won't stop," he said. "You decide the third meal. You decide every meal after that. I didn't get to eat enough 500 years ago. In this lifetime, I want to make up for it." My ears turned bright red. I ducked my head and pretended to adjust my apron. Up at the front of the sword, Li Tiangang muttered under his breath. Back when the god of war trained troops in the western frontier, his voice could shatter half a city. How did he turn into this softy when talking to Miss Xiaoya? Gu Fei kicked him from behind. "Shut up and fly your sword." The night we returned to the night market, I cooked the most meticulous wok of egg-fried rice of my entire life. Every grain of rice was distinct, wrapped in a golden hue of egg. The moment I sprinkled the chopped green onions, the steam rising from the wok condensed into the shape of a small dog, running a full circle around the stove before dissipating. Chu Guangfeng sat on the curb where I usually sat, holding his bowl, eating it bite by bite. The night market was booming around us. The line of people was loud and chaotic. Li Tiangang was at the front managing crowd control, and Gu Fei was holding his phone, getting close-ups of the god of war mukbang. Halfway through the bowl, Chu Guangfeng suddenly stopped and looked up at me. "It's delicious." "Of course it is. Look who made it." I mean, he held his bowl, looking seriously into my eyes. "This bowl of rice tastes better than the victory banquet I had at the Marshal's Manor 500 years ago. Xiaoya, can you cook every meal for me from now on?" The line of people went silent. The live stream went silent. The number ticket in Li Tiangang's hand dropped to the ground. I stood at the kitchen door. My apron was still stained with oil, and my hair was a bit messy from the steam. But I didn't hesitate. "Sure," I said. "But you're washing the dishes." Chu Guangfeng threw his head back and laughed. His laughter was so loud it made the light bulbs above the night market flicker. After we closed up that night, I placed a second dog chew toy next to his old dog bed. I didn't throw the old one away. I just put the new one right next to it. Chu Guangfeng walked by, looked down at them, then looked up at me. "When did you buy that?" "The day we came back." "You had it prepared the whole time?" "Yeah." I pretended to crouch down and tie my shoelace. I was worried you might turn back into a dog one day and not have a chew toy. He was silent for a few seconds. Then he bent down and aligned the two chew toys perfectly side by side. I'm not changing back, he said. I'll be human from now on. If I'm a dog, I can't eat the crispy rice you make. I stayed crouched on the ground, not looking up, but the corners of my mouth curled up so high I couldn't press them down. The moonlight flooded the courtyard. Auntie Wong was humming a tune as she packed up her stall next door. The comments in Gu Fei's live stream were still scrolling frantically, and Li Tiangang was squatting on the wall secretly peeling garlic. The world was loud and chaotic. But Chu Guangfeng stood in front of me, his shadow falling over me, blocking all the wind. Let's go, he said. Welcome home. I stood up and followed him through the door, bathed in warm yellow light. Before the door closed, I looked back one last time at the two chew toys lying side by side in the yard. Suddenly, I felt like there was nothing left in this lifetime to be afraid of. After all, the dog. No, the man, who flattened the 30 cities of the western frontier, was now mine.